Let's now move on to our second main focus this evening on Newsnight. As India and Pakistan talk peace in Islamabad, the threat of terrorism is all too real in Jammu and Kashmir, and thousands of brave young Indian soldiers make huge sacrifices almost every single day. This is the story of Lieutenant Triveni Singh, who saved the lives of hundreds of people at the Jammu railway station last week when he took on two heavily armed militants single-handedly. The young lieutenant paid with his life.
Grief and pride mingle as Lieutenant Triveni Singh's family remember their brave son, who died on Saturday while saving hundreds of passengers at the Jammu railway station during a Fidaiin attack. A brave son of Pathankot who had done his schooling and then graduation in agricultural sciences from there decided to join the army like his father in 2001, going on to top his batch at IMA.
Well, now joining us for more on this young hero, Colonel Anil Shorey, the Public Relations Officer of the Indian Army. Thank you very much for joining us this evening on Newsnight. Tell us a little bit about Lieutenant Triveni Singh. What exactly did he do at Jammu station on that night?
Lieutenant Triveni, the moment he got information from his commanding officer, Colonel Verma, that a siege had taken place in the station by certain terrorists, apparently Fidaiin, rushed with his quick reaction team comprising of about 20 personnel, and he himself was heading this team. And the moment they neared the station, he learnt from his certain person who were in contact in the press personnel that two terrorists apparently were seen and spotted. So he split his team into two groups. One of them apparently cordoned the area from the outside, the station from the outside, from the main entrance, while he, along with 10 personnel, moved inside. And as he moved inside, certain amount of firing was going on. So he did instruct some of his personnel to remove the civilians who were in the line of fire aside to safety and observed where the fire could come from. In no time, one of his deputy who was with him, his buddy that is, Havildar Faisal, came under fire. And within a split seconds, he knew where the fire is coming from. He instantly reacted and brought down the terrorist who was near the overbridge. The second terrorist, he thought he saw a movement on the overbridge on platform number 2. So he just jumped down, went through the railway lines to this platform number 2 and rushed up the stairs. The person he saw apparently moved back to platform number 1 and headed northwards, leaving his jacket behind. He rushed behind him and tried to fire, but this person threw a grenade at him, and as he was stepping down the steps, he sustained injury in his legs. Undeterred, he moved forward. In the meantime, his buddy, as I said, Hussain, he fired at the terrorist, trying to give him cover fire. They have a certain zigzag tactics they follow. So he, in the meantime, rushed at the terrorist with his weapon and close quarter battle position. And I think when they came near enough, that's the time when the terrorist was about to throw a second grenade, which apparently exploded when they were both in very close proximity. There was an exchange of burst also at that time, but perhaps that was the last that these two engaged personnel could see for that evening. The officer had fallen down, tried to get up. The terrorist was motionless at the time and tried to look around, perhaps for his commanding officer who was already at his heels. But then, as what the eyewitnesses say, he succumbed to his injuries.
We are speaking about one young army officer, and perhaps we're doing that because the media covered the story in a very large way. There was a large media presence there. A lot of this was actually filmed. But there are hundreds of young officers and indeed soldiers, Jawans, who continue to do this on a daily basis. And a lot of their heroism really goes unreported, isn't it?
Very true. He happened to be at an area which is a media center, and there are a number of instances. Now these are very motivated boys, the youngsters who join, and everybody wants to at least see operations in the CI grid. And usually his endeavor is to request for a posting to a forward area, if not at least to a counter-insurgency grid. So there are many operations which take place in the hinterland, which people don't come to know. For a matter of fact, in the last 1 year, that is in the year 2003 till this January, 1 week less than that, we've had 19 officers who have made the supreme sacrifice, all of the rank of lieutenant to captain, maybe an odd major.
You bring up an important point of so many officers being killed, it has to do with what we also saw in all our wars, certainly in Kargil, officers leading from the front. Explain how this actually works. I mean, how are young officers fresh out of the IMA or the NDA actually trained? How does this thinking work in terms of leading from the front?
This has been, and it's kind of inbuilt into training, and they get so impassioned, and they really have that urge to try and prove something. Now, being young as they are and highly motivated, and also when they join an old battalion of an old regiment, like Triveni was from a very old battalion, a famous battalion, the Jammu and Kashmir Light Infantry. So old regiments have their traditions and izzat. So these officers, they take it as a challenge to try and prove something and do something in the name of the battalion and the Indian Army. Invariably they lead from the front, because they are the people who feel that they can motivate the men to follow them. Now, there are certain tactics which are followed, in which, you know, a small team concept is one of the tactics. The QRTs are always
Quick reaction
teams are always led by officers again. And whenever such kind of operations take place, where you have to come close and deal with terrorists who are armed and who have no love lost for anyone, that's the time when certain minor tactics, you know, a small team concept comes into play.
Right.
And this is where the officer has to ensure that his subgroups, they really react in a...
Colonel, we're running short on time. Thanks very much for telling us about this young hero who died in the line of fire.